All right, good afternoon. Hello, everyone. It is a beautiful day to discuss a hot topic, compliance and good governance in ECD centers. And I see 56 people have already joined us, and they're interested in some answers. They have questions. Kayan, Demetria, and I have answers for you. We hope we can answer all of your questions. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. We'd love to hear where you're from. I see Josina has joined us. Welcome, everyone. Yanni Klopper from Clara Cell. Oh, that's very interesting. Karabo from Bright Stars ELC in Germiston. We have people all over the country joining us today. So I promise you, this is going to be your most productive lunch break of the week. We are going to share lots of interesting information, and we'd also love to hear from you if you have questions or comments, or perhaps you have some advice and contributions. Put them in the chat, and we'd love to share that with other center owners who are joining the call. Welcome again to all of the new people who have joined. Thank you to everybody for making time and being on time. Today, we're discussing compliance and good governance in ECD centers. And what we've done is we've run several polls. We've reached out to ECD center owners across the country, and we've asked them, what are your top questions? What are the burning issues? What are the things you'd love some advice on? And we've put together 7 FAQs for today that we'll go through. Joining me, thank you so much for joining us, is Kayan Skoltz from ECD. He's a project lead at ECD, and we'll explain more about what they do and how they support ECD centers. My other guest is Demetria Madziwo. She's a ECD center business mentor based in Durban. So we are going to have a really great conversation today. So those are the 2 people joining us. After we discuss just a short intro, we'll head straight into those FAQs, the top 7 FAQs that we've received, and we'll look at how else we can help your ECD center. Feel free to use the chat section if you have any questions or comments, want to share some thoughts. So those of you who are not familiar with Grow ECD, my name is Helene. I'm the marketing manager for Grow ECD, and we're a nonprofit organization that wants to see 5-star early learning happening in every neighborhood. That's why we've been developing a model that makes running a sustainable ECD business more possible, more practical for all. And the way we do that is we equip and we connect centers with the tools, the skills, and the resources they need to provide quality education while also improving their business sustainability. We call it that you need to have a heart for children and a head for business if you want to run a sustainable ECD center. So for us, it's all about equipping and connecting you and training and supporting you with the skills and the resources and the tools that you need. These free webinars are, for example, one of the tools that we use. So welcome. We're very glad to have you here today. Kayan, will you introduce yourself, please? I'm Mtweni.
Yeah, thank you so much, Helene. And thank you to everyone for joining today, and thank you to Grow for organizing. I think these questions are constantly coming up, so I think it's fantastic to have a resource where some of these critical questions are actually answered. So the work that we do at UNEDI, we try to connect different people working with young children to good quality information and resources. So we take information that exists in the ECD sector, some of the fantastic information that's been produced by Grow, like the registration guide that Grow has worked on, and we help to make sure that those pieces of information reach ECD practitioners. There are different organizations doing fantastic work across South Africa, helping to create valuable resources that can make ECDs deliver really good quality programs, but they're not always reaching all ECD practitioners and all ECD principals across South Africa. So that's the work that we do, is we help to establish WhatsApp groups, we establish Facebook pages, we share mass SMS, and we also help to gather those materials in a single space where everybody can find them.
Awesome. Thank you very much. All right, so without further ado, I promised you we're going to have a productive lunch break. We're going to head straight into one of the first FAQs. So Demetria, whether some people are planning to open an ECD center, and some have already opened their center, but they're thinking about the right steps to follow to get it registered. Please, can you give us some advice on what these steps are that we need to follow, and why we're thinking about some things before we're thinking of others?
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you, Elaine, and afternoon, everyone. Okay, so the first step that you need to look at is you need to decide on the entity of your structure. In other words, you need to decide whether your business is going to be registered as a for-profit business, or is it going to be a non-profit business? And if you are a for-profit, it can either be a sole proprietor, or it can be a profit company. And then if it's a non-profit, it can either be a trust, a voluntary, or an NPC. Okay, so with this, you would need to also decide if you are registered as a for-profit. For example, as a company, you need to decide on your directors. So, but on the other hand, if you're a sole proprietor, you can also just be a sole director. And then as a non-profit, you will need to decide on the committee. So, because these are the people that are essentially going to be managing your business. So when you look at it, you look at people like your chairperson, your vice chairperson, secretary, your treasurer, all of those need to be there. And then when you look at the for-profit business, you'll see that you are the one who's making your own decisions. Whereas with the non-profits, it's governed by the committee. So they are essentially the ones that are making the decisions. So another distinct difference is that with a for-profit business, you can actually pass on ownership. Say, for example, in the event that you no longer want to run the center, or you have passed on. Whereas with the non-profits, you cannot do that. The committee are the ones that are actually going to decide on, who is going to be running the center. So there are all those differences that you have to think about. As a sole proprietor or for-profit business, sorry, Hillian, one other thing that you just need to know that is that
sorry,
you are the one.
I see that I'm skipping through the slides incorrectly. Sorry,
Yes.
that's my
Okay.
my finger trouble. Please continue
Okay.
explaining the difference between for-profit and non-profits.
No problem. Okay, so the other distinct difference there is that as a for-profit, you are, if you're a sole proprietor, you are personally liable for the business. So for example, if the business is in debt or if anything that is unfortunate happens, you are unfortunately liable for the business. However, with a company, there is limited liability. So these are some of the things that you need to think about as you register. And it's quite important for you to decide what's the entity that the business is going to take, because it does affect the processes that follow as you go ahead with your registration.
Yes, that's true. That's very helpful. So and we can come back to any more questions that people might have between for-profit and non-profit. The point is that both are absolutely fine and good. It's that you need to review and decide which entity type is going to be best for your ECD center. But I think, Dimitri, I really understand now why you're saying that that's step number one, is you need to decide your entity structure, because based on what you decide, it will affect, for example, your business plan in step number 3, right?
Yeah, it will definitely affect your business plan. Yeah. So maybe just after, if we can take the steps. So from step 1, you've decided the entity structure. Now you move on to step 2, which is finding premises. So now here, what you need to keep in mind is that you need to find a premise that is structurally sound. Okay. So what does that mean? It means that the premise or your center needs to be a premise that protects children from the sun, from the rain, from wind, and it needs to have enough ventilation, and it needs to be free from hazards. Because remember, the key thing here is you want to keep the children safe. You want to protect the children. So that's one key thing. And then also with the premises, you have to decide if, for example, if your center is in the residential area, you have to apply for a land use permit, so to allow you to be able to run your ECD center. Also with the premises, there needs to be approved building plans. So if you think each and every structure within the center, it needs to have approved business plans. If you're owning the premises, then you also need to provide title deeds. And, you know, I don't know, I guess it varies from province to province, but I know here in KZN, if you don't have title deeds and you have what we call permission to occupy, commonly known as a PTO, that will also suffice. So say you're not owning the premises, you need then to have at least a lease agreement if you are renting the premises. So all those things you have to keep in mind. And one other thing also with the premises is the floor size. And with the floor size, you have to keep in mind what is the stipulated requirement with regards to, for example, inside area. There needs to be at least 1 square meter per child on the inside area. So all those things you have to think about when you're looking at finding the premises. Now that you've done that, the next step would be prepare a business plan. And as Helene has already indicated there, this is very important. This I like to call the GPS for your business, because it's literally a roadmap that helps you, or that clearly stipulates how your business is going to be run. So with this, there's quite a lot of things that you have to think about. What is the vision of your business? Who is your target market? Where is the location of the business? What are the business hours? You have to also think about what is the teacher-child ratio, and we'll discuss that a little bit further. But one thing that I want to highlight here on the business plan is the fees that you're going to charge. You know, Helene, we often meet principals that find themselves in a little bit of a conundrum of not knowing exactly how much school fees should they charge. So on the one hand, they're asking themselves, should I charge the fees that everybody else is charging in the community, or should I charge a little bit less so that I can have a competitive advantage? But I think the key thing here is to know what is the break-even fee for my center. In other words, which fee should I charge so that at the end of the month, I'm able to pay all of the expenses of the business. And this includes both the fixed expenses and the variable expenses. So this is very important. And I think that for those that are more interested in knowing about how to charge break-even fee, we do have, we talk about this in detail in one of our courses, How to Run a Sustainable Center, and it's there on the app. So the next step is preparing to open your center. So here we are looking at things like your policies and procedures. There's various policies that you need to have in place. One of these policies being a disciplinary policy, health and illness policy. And with that said, it's important to know that also it covers the administration of medicine, which is quite crucial, because you need to know that once a child is sick, the parents need to be notified. And if you are in fact administering medicine, there needs to be the consent of the parents. So all these things are very important. There's also the HIV policy, admissions policy, disability policy, for example, which also includes the admissions and inclusion of children with physical and cognitive disabilities. And also here, it's important to know that even your staff as well, the teachers, they need to be trained on these policies and procedures. They need to know. And then once you've got that in place, you move to step number 5, which is now the selection of the education program. Now, what's key here to note is that the education program needs to be NCF aligned. In other words, it needs to meet all of the 6 elders that are stipulated in on the NCF. There needs to be an overview of the program, there needs to be a daily program, and there has to be an implementation program. And again here, there has to be an implementation program per age group. Okay, so now that you have your education program in place, the next step would be the recruiting and training of your staff. Here again, it's very important to know all the relevant role players. For example, if it's an NPO, you need to have all of those role players that we have mentioned, the chairperson, the vice chairperson, treasurer, the secretary, all of them. And it's important that these people also, you submit their Form 29, okay, which is basically an inquiry by the employer to say, these people's names are appearing on the Child Protection Register. Even though they're not involved in the day-to-day running of the business, you still need to submit the Form 29. As for the chairperson, you would submit Form 30. Okay, so again, with the training of the staff, what's crucial to note here is that your staff, there needs to be at least a staff member that is trained for first aid, because you need to have a first aid officer, and you also need to have a firefighting officer. That's also very important. And then I think we'll discuss a little bit further with regards to what are the qualifications that are required and all that.
Yes.
So now that you have recruitment, you get to the last stage, which is the registration of your center. And with this process now, you now have to approach your nearest ECD service point, and then you go through all of the processes required with the municipalities, relevant municipalities, starting with the planning and development, building development management department, and then moving on to health, moving on to fire, and then lastly, you get to your Department of Education.
Demetria, that was a mouthful. Incredible.
Yes,
7 steps. Okay,
yes.
but I think what Demetria has done is she's really warmed us up. We are going to go into some more details on some of these points today. Okay, so don't stress if you've missed some of it. We will also share some specific resources that you can take with you to read through slowly and make sure that you get all the details behind each of these. But I think what was helpful, Demetria, is really seeing that if you're doing everything from number 1 to 6, by the time you're getting to registration, everything is in order and ready for the next step. So you don't want to head into registration if you're not feeling confident, right, that you have at least some of the basics in place. Now, while you were talking, we had 1 or 2 really good questions. Kane, I want you to answer the one question for us, please, which, let me just go to slide number 2. And this had to do with the difference between registering your center as a profit or a non-profit organization. And someone was asking, do you have to be a kind of for-profit ECD center apply for funding? And Ken, your answer that you put in the chat was lovely. Just talk us through that.
Yeah, thanks, Elaine. And it's a great question. So I think the important distinction, so in the Department of Social Development had indicated that all ECDs that wanted to receive the per child per day subsidy had to also be registered as nonprofit organizations and therefore would not have been able to be for-profit businesses because the two are mutually exclusive. Now in 2022, the Minister of Education announced that that would no longer be a requirement. And that was announced at a national level, and it should be that the provinces are taking that up. There can be some difference in variation in terms of provincial implementation, but it should be the case that at your local province, you can be a registered for-profit business and be eligible to receive the ECD subsidy. But it's important to note you still need to be serving poor children. So the eligibility criteria for the per child per day subsidy is that you serve poor children. That is often defined as children who are receiving the child support grant. Sometimes it's defined as serving children in a ward that's been defined as a poor ward. But either way, you need to make sure that you are serving those children. If you're serving wealthy children, you wouldn't be eligible for the per child per day subsidy.
Yes, absolutely. Then I also saw that Melanie had a good question about when Demetria was talking about policies and procedures. We will share a lot of great resources with you shortly, but know that in principle, we do have policies and procedures already written out, which you can just personalize for your center if you want to from the Grow ECD app. We'll tell you more about that in a second. In fact, here we go. So if you're thinking, oh, I need more details on these processes and the tips, I see someone was asking about who should I ask, what's the name of the department. We have 3 resources for you that I really think can make a big difference. And these are all available for free to you through the Grow Giraffe app. So if you're not aware of the app yet, the Grow Giraffe app is the app for center owners, right? Not teachers and parents. There's one for teachers and parents too. Grow Giraffe is for center owners. And in there, you can find, the first thing is a resource center where you can download free resources. The one you're going to be looking for first is the practical registration guide. This is a 62-page step-by-step guide to explain all the registration requirements for you and give you advice. The next is the downloadable resources. So when we're referring to the health policy, the disability policy, the cell phone policy, you can find those on the app as well. And then if you want to know what exactly will the questions be that the person coming to assess your center will look at, we've built those into the app as a self-assessment checklist. So Kane will explain the bronze, silver, and gold registrations in a minute. And in each of those, there are different criteria. Now, imagine you had the exam and the memo for an exam, right? That's basically what this is you don't flunk this exam because we have all the questions for you. You can go into the registration checklist, check out what is needed for bronze, silver, and gold registration, and make sure you have all of those items in advance. All right. So with that in mind, Kane, tell us a little bit more about, I've heard about the Vangasali, bronze, silver, and gold partial care registration. Just explain partial care registration for us and what we're talking about here.
Yeah, thanks, Helene. I think this is a really important question, and I think it's also something that maybe has been changing, which I think is why it's still a little bit confusing for many people. In 2019, the Department of Social Development at the time introduced a partial care registration framework. And so the important point here is that you can be conditionally registered and you can be fully registered. So conditional registration, bronze registration, silver registration are forms of conditional registration or provisional registration, while gold registration is seen as full registration. And what that is aimed at doing is providing an on-ramp to registration for ECDs that are struggling to get registered. Important to note here, there are 2 forms of registration. So I think we had a fantastic discussion of registering your business earlier, registering a business or nonprofit organization. We also need to register in terms of being an ECD provider. You have to register if you are offering your services to more than 6 children at a facility, more than 16 hours a week, you have to register as a partial care facility. So that registration is, in a sense, confirmation that your structure is safe and able to provide safe care for children for a sustained period of time. What makes it confusing is that ECD programs are also expected to register as ECD programs. So there are 2 forms of registration, both that have bronze, silver, and gold. And what we're going to talk about today is mostly the partial care registration, because that is the main barrier to registration for most ECD centers. It's the things that are in your actual ECD facility. The program registration can also be a barrier, and we will talk a little bit about the requirements for qualifications at the end of the conversation. But we're mostly going to focus on that first one, which is the partial care registration for your partial care facility.
Yes.
Okay. So what does partial care registration cover? I mean, it covers a lot of things. That's what you're going to see on this list. There are 16 different things that you need to think about. Just to make everyone understand what Vangasali is, Vangasali was a mass registration drive that the Department of Social Development launched back in 2019. It's been aimed at increasing registration across the country in certain provinces. There are efforts to really help register most ECDs, and it's sometimes still Vangasali branded. We'll talk a little bit about the developments now about an attempt to increase registration this year, but I'll leave that till the next slide. But essentially, your center will need to be assessed across 16 different compliance areas. They'll need to ensure that it's a safe environment for children, which obviously makes sense, that there's adequate space and ventilation. We'll talk a little bit about the space requirements later, that there are staff routines and practices, that there's proper care for children or children who become ill, safe drinking water, safe storage for anything that may be harmful for children, access to refuse removal, emergency action plans, hygiene and adequate toilet facilities, which I know can also be an issue for some ECD programs, separating children of different ages, hygiene area for food preparation, so a separate area for food preparation, policies and procedures, management of the facility needs to be well described. The employment of staff needs to be legal, needs to be appropriate. There needs to be aftercare support, and there needs to be transport support if necessary. So these are some of the things that when somebody comes to visit your ECD, you will be assessed on each of these different criteria to determine where you fall.
Yes,
Exactly.
And these are the categories that you'll see in that registration self-assessment checklist on the app. So if you open the checklist for staff routines and practices, it'll explain what exactly are the things that people are looking for. Now, Kane's going to help us because we're going to look at what currently some of the differences are between conditional and full registration.
Yeah, and thanks for mentioning the app, Gillian. I think the app, because this is not the complete list, we're not going to go through absolutely everything today. The app actually does have the complete checklist. So if you wanted to know, like, would I be able to pass registration? If you go to the app and you fill in that checklist, you'll be able to see, where would I fall? So a quick note at the top here, the DBE has announced in a meeting of the Intersectoral Forum in February this year, they announced that there will be a mass registration drive this year, where they will be trying to register ECD programs that are providing care, that are doing their best to comply. They're going to be they're going to be increasing the pace at which they're supporting registration and trying to complexify some of these issues. As we can see, it's quite a difficult, it can be quite a difficult compliance system. So for now, this is what we know, but just to note, in the next few months, you may see information about a mass registration drive, and that will be an update to this information. But for now, if you look at, this is just a good example of the bronze, silver, and gold on the partial care registration framework. So, for example, if you are keeping babies aged 0 to 24 months in a separate or partitioned space or separate room with at least 1 meter of space per child, you meet the minimum criteria for bronze registration on space allocation on the partial care registration framework. If you have less than that, for example, if you don't have at least 1 square meter per child, or if you don't have a separate space for babies, you are then not meeting the minimum criteria for bronze, and you wouldn't be eligible for registration. Okay, so you wouldn't even get your minimum standard of registration. Then on the right-hand side, you see that if you have a separate room or partitioned off areas for each age group, 0 to 18 months, 18 to 16 months, 3 to 4 years, 4 to 6 years, and at least 1.5 meters of space per child, now you're eligible for gold registration under the space now you have meet the minimum criteria for gold registration under space allocation. Important when interpreting all of these different things, you're going to be scored on each of these components, and you're only going to be eligible for gold registration if you meet all of the gold registration criteria for partial care. If you don't meet all of the gold registration criteria, they will check if you meet all of the silver registration criteria. If you don't meet all of the silver registration criteria, they will check if you meet all of the bronze registration criteria. And if you don't meet all of the bronze registration criteria, then you will not be registered. So just to understand, just because you meet one of the gold registration criteria does not mean that you will be registered at a gold level. Also important, as we talked about earlier, bronze is partial care, bronze is conditionally registered, silver is conditionally registered, gold is fully registered. So only gold registration counts as full registration. Bronze and silver suggest that you are on your journey to full registration, and so will need to improve your ECD before the next assessment. And that would typically be, I think, every 3 years.
Okay.
Okay, but it does give you permission to operate, and it does make you eligible to receive the per child per day subsidy if you're serving for children.
Yes.
And you complete your application for the subsidy. Okay, so I'm going to move on quickly and look at the other items here. So the qualifications: the supervisor or lead practitioner must have basic training and at least 1 year's experience working with children. That's a bronze level. Silver supervisor or lead practitioner must have a basic training and at least 2 years working with children. Gold level supervisor must have at least an NQF level 5 qualification, and the lead practitioner must have an NQF level 4 qualification or at least 3 years working experience. Now, the difference there between a supervisor, that's if you're working with, if you're running an ECD center, which I believe most people on the call are running, look at the lead practitioner there, right? So an NQF level 4 ECD qualification is what you need, what the lead practitioner needs in order for gold registration. So I think that's the key message to leave with there. And that's actually a program registration requirement, but it would be a requirement for you. Next up, general safety. The site for bronze registration, if the site is not enclosed, but it's not in the vicinity of any hazards that pose a danger to children, for example, a busy road or a train track or an open body of water, then you can get bronze registration under general safety. But for gold registration, the site needs to be enclosed with a fence or similar barrier or with a lockable gate. So I think that makes sense. Can we move on? Yeah?
That's good examples. We have a few more for us here.
Great. Okay, then some examples on management. For example, the full name, sex, date, and birth of an identity number of children where available for each child. You need to be collecting that for the children who are registered in your ECD center if you want that bronze registration. If you want to go a bit further, for the silver registration, you need the full name, sex, date of birth, and identity number of each child. Policies and procedures. For the silver registration, you need written policies, including practices aimed at preventing the spread of infectious diseases, such as hand washing, ensuring bed and linen and blankets and towels are washed regularly, and dealing with infectious diseases. So you need to have these documented so you can present them to the departmental official, or if you're in the Western Cape, you might have a social service organization supporting with compiling these portfolios of evidence for your registration application. Okay, moving on. For hygiene and adequate toilet facility for the bronze registration, you need to ensure that there's one potty for every children aged 0 to 3 who are not using nappies, or one appropriate toilet with a reduced pot size and height for every 30 children aged 0 to 3 not using nappies. And you can see how at a silver level that increases. So for a silver level, you need one potty for every 5 children, not every 10 children not using nappies, and one appropriate toilet for height for every 30 children 0 to 3 not using nappies. And then at a gold level, you need one potty for every child 0 to 3 not using nappies, or reduced pot size for every 20 children. So you can sort of see how it becomes harder and harder to get the higher levels. Okay.
This is a great summary. Thank you very much. I saw that we had a few questions from people asking about how to apply for the subsidy. That was a good one. And I thought that this summary here is really helpful. So the subsidy is not determined by how much you are charging. It's determined by who you are serving, who your customer is. So thank you, Lindsay, for summarizing here. She says that the ECD subsidy is 17 Rand per child per day, and it's for 264 days. So not every day, the children are not in your center every day, right? And it's determined by a means test. Now, when we say a means test, it says if a single parent earns more than 3,800 Rand per month, or if the joint family earns more than 7,600 Rand per month, then you don't qualify for the subsidy. All right, so you're not applying for a subsidy for the whole center. It's based on the learners in your preschool. Am I correct, Kayan, in saying that? That's good.
Yeah, exactly. So you could get a subsidy for 20 children, but not for all of the children in your care.
All right. And Demetria, I think this question, probably the answer is it depends, but let me ask you this question anyway. If people want to submit their documents, they've prepared their documents, they want to go forward with registration, in general, who should people reach out to if they want to get registered for partial care?
So as you said, Helene, it probably depends from province to province, but I know in KZN, you have a designated social worker whom you would submit all your application to, and they would then submit it to the Department of Education.
Okay. Kane,
And
do you have
maybe,
any view?
yeah, no, just to add to that. So basically, most provinces, there's a district social worker who should be allocated for your area, who you should be able to approach for registration. There are provinces like Gauteng recently that have been doing a mass registration drive where they've been organizing jamborees in the province, which people would be invited to submit registration. So that would be at a particular time. You would be asked to join. And then in the Western Cape, it's also slightly different in that there are social service organizations allocated to provide services in specific regions of the province. So you would need, if you live in the Western Cape, you would need to identify your social service organization. They would help you compile your registration application and submit that to the department.
Yes. I see here Dina Gapse saying your designated SSO for your area. Yes. Exactly. All right. So I've mentioned the registration checklist. This is just to zoom in and give you an example of what that looks like. I see Laurentia is asking, what documents do I need? Laurentia, I think this is also a good place for you to have a look. So in the Grow Giraffe app, you can see there's a section for partial care facility. If you click on that, you can go into the bronze, silver, and gold requirements. Just beneath the partial care facility is ECD program requirements. That was the other registration that KN was referring to. Same in there. If you click in ECD program, you'll see the bronze, silver, and gold requirements. Then there's a link to support documents and resources, and you can view your results. So it's almost like you're marking yourself, you're checking yourself, and then you can see, ooh, I don't have an HIV/AIDS policy, or I don't have enough ventilation. And you can prioritize what are the things you will be working on to meet these requirements. Now,
and maybe just
yes.
So, I mean, I think the app is fantastic, and I love that there are so many people who are excited to use it. Some of these we are hoping, I mean, the Children's Act is about to be revised, and that hopefully when that is revised, will have some implications for registration. It won't be this year though, so maybe by 2025. And then the mass registration drive again. So there may be some reduction in the complexity of the registration application this year. But I think the Grow app is a really good starting point to know what you need.
I think I think we all hope so. We're all lobbying for some changes and leniency towards registration, and we'll make sure we stay up to date on any changes that happen, and we'll share that with you. Also, I think that what I really appreciate, Kane, as you were saying at the beginning, it's your road to registration. It's developmental. So maybe right now, today, you're not meeting 100% of all the gold requirements. That doesn't mean you're running a bad center. It doesn't mean you're not doing your best. It's about just saying, where are you? Where would you like to be in future? And now just prioritize and think, what are some of the top things that I would want to change in the next week, the next month, the next year? I think sometimes we overestimate how much we can do in a week, and we underestimate how much we can do in a year, right? So a year from now, you could have made a lot of changes.
Yeah.
Demetria, the right teacher to child ratio. Oh, I'd love you to explain this to us, please.
Okay, so this is quite important. As you run your center, you need to be aware of what is the right teacher to child ratio. So as you can see there, for various age groups, so for example, for the children from 1 to 18 months, there needs to be 1 practitioner for 6 children. And then from 18 months to 3 years, there needs to be 1 practitioner for 12 children. And these are all bronze requirements. From 3 years to 4 years, there needs to be 1 teacher for 20 children. And then lastly, from 5 years to 6 years, there needs to be 1 teacher for every 30 children. Now, the difference with the gold registration is you need to have an assistant for every practitioner in each age group. So yeah, So depending on, this is very important for you to know, for example, as we were talking about the business plan, you need to know as you are recruiting, you need to be able to ask yourself, but what is the teacher to child ratio? At least you need to know at least the bare minimum. What is the minimum requirements for the teacher to child ratio to help you make the right decision as you recruit your staff?
And Demetria, now that I'm thinking about it, now that I know how many teachers I need at minimum, possibly a teacher plus assistant per learner, this affects my decisions when I'm choosing my premises, right? And you'll see later there's another FAQ where we help you calculate how many learners are you allowed to have in your space. So you can see these three things are all connected. And that's why you need to take some time to think about your business plan. How big is your center? How many learners legally can you accommodate? And then how many teachers do you need to employ, or assistant teachers as well, to meet these ratios? So definitely take a screenshot of this. This is going to be helpful. Let me just check. We have a lot of questions in the chat. We won't be able to get to all of them. We had a question from Pelisiwe about registration with SARS. I don't think we have time to go into that into detail today, but we do have a section in the registration guide which talks about that. And then Yanni Klopper was asking about, how do I know if a training institute is offering an accredited course? So there is a website where you can actually check the official qualifications that an organization provides official qualifications. RO does not provide qualifications. We just provide continuous professional development training. Okay. In fact, here we go. We are talking about qualifications right now. Okay, and I saw previously someone asked about supervisor and lead practitioner. Kane is going to talk through minimum qualifications in this slide.
Yeah, thanks, Gillian. So this can be a little bit confusing, but essentially, if you want to run an ECD program at a bronze level, you just need basic qualifications and 1 year's experience operating in ECD. So your supervisor and lead practitioner needs some experience having worked in the ECD sector, worked with young children. Similarly, for silver, you need 2 years of experience. And then for gold, and here's where the difference between the supervisor and lead practitioner comes in. Your supervisor would need an NQF level 5. That's for ECD programs, and this is, for example, if you're running an organization that has multiple what are they called? Play groups, for example. If you have multiple play groups, your lead supervisor who's managing those other smaller play groups needs to have a higher level qualification because it's a more serious responsibility. Whereas for an ECD center, and I think that's most of the people on the call, your lead practitioner there would need an NQF level 4 or 3 years work experience. Now, note there that it does actually, at the moment, allow for work experience to be comparable to an NQF level 4. I think an important point here is that, ECD qualifications, they're provided, but then also by some accredited not-profit organizations. And then there are a few for-profit organizations that also offer accredited training. They can be difficult to discern. As Helene mentioned, it is important to do research to check whether the service provider you're working for, that you're looking at, does offer accredited qualifications. But yeah, there certainly are, there can be difficulties getting qualifications in the ECD sector, certainly.
Yes, so Thelma, you're asking, do we offer a level 5 qualification? Grow ECD does not provide any NQF qualifications, but there are lots of really good colleges and institutes out there who provide ECD qualifications. You have to do your research to make sure that they provide a good one and that they're registered. There are websites where we can find that. I'm afraid I just don't have the name of that website in my head right now. But what I can do is answer a question. Dikeledi and Paul were asking questions about babies. Dikeledi says that she has 1 to 3 year olds and 3 to 5 year old children in one classroom. Okay, so let's go back to this slide that Demetra was showing us. So she's asking, can they all be in one classroom? Demetria, let's see if I was listening to what you were saying. You told us that if children are between 1 and 18 months old, they need, in fact, Kane, you told us in this section here, that babies aged 0 to 24 months must be in a separate partitioned space or in a separate room. All right, am I correct? Plus, we're hearing, on top of that, children who are under 18 months, you must have at least one staff member for every 6 children under 18. So I think that answers your question, right? And Demetra, what do we mean by a separate classroom? I understand, but as partitioned space, can you explain a partitioned space?
Yes. So in other words, the children in that age group need to be in a separate space. So yes, it can be a partitioned space where the other children that are perhaps older are not in the same space as the babies. Yeah. So if it's a big room, it can be a partitioned area that is exclusive only for that age group.
Keeps the older children can't walk in and walk through and
No.
get to the babies. All right.
Yes.
Now, Catherine Fruitboom, you're asking a good question. She's saying, I'm a qualified teacher. I would like to start my own center. Will I be able to do it without an ECD level 4 or 5? I don't know. So as a qualified teacher, you probably have a different degree, right? Kayan, do you have an answer for Catherine there? A suggestion?
Yeah, so I think important to note, for a gold level, what you want is those NQF level 4 qualifications, but at a bronze level. So if you're willing to start your journey, you can at a bronze level. If you have some experience working with young children, that will be sufficient. But at a gold level, you would need the NQF level 4.
Thank you. And also thank you to Terrell. She has found the website where you can verify a training institute's accreditation. So it's called SAQA, SAQA.org.za, SAQA.org.za. Go on there and check that college or that institute out and see if they are listed on SAQA as a registered, verified accreditations training institute. All right. Now we're heading on to FAQ number 6, Kayan. Premises. People have questions about this, and I don't want people to sign lease agreements for 24 months until they're 100% sure that that lease is, that the space is definitely what they need. So talk to us through some of these requirements.
And I'm noting that we are 10 minutes. We have 10 minutes. I'm going to try and be quick. So basically, I think really important when you think about the premises, it's absolutely critical that you identify the right premises. So it needs to meet the partial care facility minimum norms and standards. We've walked through some of those, but it must meet at least bronze level to achieve conditional registration, i.e. it must be a formal structure, weatherproof, fenced or from dangers, hygienic, at least 2 doors and 1 window, enough light and ventilation, 1 square meter per child, fire safety, access to clean drinking water. These are some of the things that will prevent you from being registered. Building plans. The building plans must reflect the current structure. Any additions must be on the building plans, and they must be legal if you want to achieve gold status. Note that new building plans are costly and can take up to 6 months. So building plans can be a major problem. They're also one of the things that sometimes people check when they want to check the number of children in the space that you have, if the space is registered to serve that number of children. Title deeds. If you are the owner of the building, so if it's your building, you must have the title deeds for the building, as you'll have to submit those as part of your registration. You'll need permission to occupy, or PTO. If you're not the owner of the building, so if you're leasing or renting, you will need to have a signed lease agreement from the owner, which gives you permission to run the center. Now, if you're renting from a residential home, you'll need a lease agreement. So I think that can also be a major barrier to some ECD programs. And then this one comes up a lot, and it does differ by municipality, but essentially land use zoning. So before you start your ECD center, it's important to have permission to operate center from your premises. The bylaws for this differ from municipality to municipality. And I realize that this can be a real challenge, you know, in informal settlements, for example, where it hasn't necessarily been zoned. So this is an issue that some municipalities are working on. You know, the City of Cape Town, for example, are looking at designating large areas, waiving some of these zoning requirements or making special permissions. So this is an issue. Basically, the ideal is, you know, make sure that you have permission to operate a center from your premises. If you're already operating a center and it isn't zoned, then I think this would be an important issue to raise with board councillors and other members in your official members in your area. Okay, so how do we calculate the maximum number of children? Should I go through this quickly?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so these are some simple calculations. So for the indoor space, you need at least 1 meter squared per child for bronze and silver. For gold registration, you need 1.5 meters squared per child for gold registration. And for the outdoor space, you need 2 meters squared per child. So that's the maximum size, so the minimum size per child.
Yes. And then someone was asking, how do I calculate that? So here's a great example to help you out. Let's say you take a screenshot now, so you can look at this again later. If your classroom is 4 meters by 6 meters, you calculate your floor space. 4 by 6 is 24 square meters. So if you look at the gold requirements, 1.5 square meters per child, you take 24 square meters divided by 1.5 square meters per child. That means 16 learners can be accommodated in this classroom. But what you'll see in this picture is there are no chairs, no cupboards, nothing else. This is unrestricted space where children can move around. So in the next picture, for example, if you're adding a desk and a cupboard, you need to calculate that size too, and remove it from your space, because children can't walk and play and sit there. And if you do that calculation, you'll see it changes to 14 learners in this classroom. That's using the gold registration requirement of 1.5 square meters. If you were using bronze, you could divide it by 1 square meters. Okay. And then can I just maybe, Demetra, you work with a lot of centers who struggle with space. What is 1 or 2 tips you can give us to increase our space?
Okay, as you've rightly said it, Helene, the space, it needs to be unobstructed space, and it doesn't include your bathroom or your kitchen or anything. So in the classrooms, perhaps you could have, as the cupboards, maybe have on the wall cupboards. Obviously, they'll need to be enclosed, so that as opposed to having like a proper cupboard that is movable, that will help you to get a little bit more space. Or maybe move the cupboard to the passage area if it's big enough, if it accommodates. So just so you have enough space in the classroom.
Yes, you have to get creative. Absolutely,
Yeah.
make sure there's enough space. Dimitri, I don't think we have time to go through business plan, but what I can tell everybody is that if you need assistance with your business plan, there is a business plan template you can download from that resource center that we spoke about. All right. We've discussed a lot of FAQs. We've had a busy lunch break with a lot of questions. I'm noticing the time, and I want to make sure we make some time to talk about how else GROW and ECD can support ECD centers who need help. So let's discuss this first. Kayan, how can people get in contact?
Yeah, thanks, Helene. So we have put our WhatsApp number on the screen. I believe the slides will also be circulated. If you are in an ECD forum, please do sign up. So we would love chair people or forum representatives to sign up to our WhatsApp groups. There we will proactively share relevant content like these fantastic GROW resources, but in addition, other kinds of valuable resources. Also, please feel free to follow us on Facebook. That will share with you regular updates from the ECD sector. Those are the easiest ways to get in touch.
Excellent. The same goes for GROW. If you need assistance with the app, we have a WhatsApp help desk. You can WhatsApp or call us. We have a Facebook page, Instagram account, and YouTube, where you will find recordings of all our previous webinars too. Maybe you'll find those very helpful, and you can share that with your team and other ECD center owners. And then we've spoken about the 3 apps that we have. The one is Giraffe for the center owner, Meerkat for your teachers so that they can take attendance, access online training, do learner assessments, those types of things, as well as a parent caregiver app called Lion, where parents and caregivers can see learner attendance tracking, assessment results, those types of things. So reach out to us if you want to get more details. We've spoken about the app. We've spoken about the fact that inside the app, there are free resources you can download. Also, the free online training is something Demetria mentioned. So perhaps your teachers have a qualification or they don't have a qualification, but they want to continue developing. The teacher development program is a free online professional development training on the app. It's not a qualification, but it supports their development. And there's lots of great training resources for you if you want to learn more and keep growing yourself and your business. The one thing I can highly recommend is if you want to engage with the likes of Demetria and the Grow team, and you want to build your head for business, you're thinking like, I really need to take myself to the next level. Our ECD Small Business Accelerator might be exactly what you need. It's 6 modules of in-person training, and it's only 600 Rand for the whole thing. It includes your lunches, your training material, professional facilitation, and you will learn a lot. You'll be learning about how to think like a business person, how to take control of your money, how to run your preschool better, and calculate that break-even fee that Demetria was talking about. We'll talk specifically about the quality education standards and what you need to meet ECD program registration requirements, as well as other registration requirements. And this is our next cohort for the accelerator is open now for bookings in Johannesburg, Durban, Cape Town, and Gqeberha. We'd love to see you there. Only 25 seats per training. All right, and take a screenshot of this if you need. These are our contact details, and we'll be happy to share the slides with everyone afterwards. Thank you, everyone, for a really great session and for sharing lots of ideas. Thank you, Kayan. Thank you, Demetria. Kayan, any last words from you? Final thoughts?
No, thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining. Thanks for organizing, Grow. This has been fantastic.
Demetria, final thoughts from you?
Thank you very much, everybody. It was a nice session. Yeah.
My
All
final
the best.
thoughts, absolutely. Thank you so much for contributing. Don't give up. Don't give up hope. Keep going. May your ECD centers be blessed. May the work you do be blessed, because we cannot give up on this work. The children of South Africa need you. So thank you very much for everything that you do for our country and our learners. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.